There are certain things empaths do that seem strange to other people. People often misunderstand them. They think empaths are overthinking, too emotional, too distant, too sensitive. But genuine empaths experience the emotional world very differently from most people. They don't just hear words, they notice tone, energy shifts, facial expressions, hidden tension, emotional inconsistency. And over time, this constant emotional awareness creates habits that outsiders rarely understand. Some of these behaviors may even seem irrational, but for true empaths, they feel completely natural. Because when someone constantly absorbs emotional information from the people around them, their nervous system starts adapting in unusual ways. Most people move through conversations casually. They hear what was said, and then they move on. But empaths rarely experience interactions that simply. A small change in someone's voice can stay in their mind for hours. A forced smile can feel emotionally heavy. Even silence can communicate something powerful to them. And while other people may ignore emotional tension, the empath unconsciously absorbs it. This is why many empaths often feel emotionally exhausted without fully understanding why. Their mind is constantly processing emotional signals in the background, trying to understand people, trying to feel safe emotionally, trying to make sense of energy that other people never even notice. Over time, this deep emotional sensitivity changes the way empaths behave. They become more cautious, more observant, more emotionally selective. Sometimes they withdraw without explanation. Sometimes they need long periods of silence. Sometimes they sense things about people that later turn out to be true. And although these behaviors may seem strange to the outside world, for genuine empaths, they are simply part of surviving in an emotionally overwhelming world. And today, we're going to explore 6 weird things empaths do that only genuine empaths truly understand. One of the strangest habits many empaths have is mentally replaying conversations for hours, sometimes even days. They revisit tiny details most people forget immediately. A pause in someone's voice, a strange facial expression, a sudden shift in tone. And while others move on quickly, the empath keeps analyzing the emotional meaning behind it. Not because they enjoy overthinking, but because emotionally aware people process social interactions much more deeply. Their brain automatically searches for emotional signals. Was that person upset? Did I accidentally hurt them? Why did their energy suddenly change? Genuine empaths become highly sensitive to emotional inconsistency. When someone says, "I'm fine," but emotionally feels heavy, the empath notices it instantly. And because their mind keeps trying to emotionally resolve incomplete interactions, they unconsciously rehearse conversations again and again. Most people never realize how mentally exhausting this can become, because the empath isn't only remembering words, they're remembering emotional energy. They remember how the room suddenly felt colder, how someone avoided eye contact for a second too long, how a person smiled, but their voice carried irritation underneath it. Most people ignore these subtle emotional signals, but empaths absorb them automatically. And once the interaction ends, their mind keeps returning to it, trying to emotionally decode what happened beneath the surface. This is why many empaths struggle to simply let things go. Not because they are weak, not because they are dramatic, but because emotionally sensitive people experience conversations on multiple levels at once. Words are only one part of communication to them. Energy matters too. Emotional tone matters too. Unspoken feelings matter too. And when something emotionally feels unresolved, the empath's nervous system keeps searching for answers long after everyone else has already forgotten the conversation ever happened. Another thing genuine empaths often do is disappear without explanation. They stop replying, avoid social interaction, withdraw emotionally for a while. And people often misunderstand this behavior. They assume the empath is being rude, cold, or losing interest. But usually, the empath is emotionally overloaded. Highly sensitive people absorb enormous amounts of emotional stimulation every single day. Crowded environments, emotional conversations, conflict, fake politeness, passive aggression. Even small interactions slowly build emotional fatigue inside them. And eventually, their nervous system reaches saturation. That's when the empath suddenly pulls away from everyone, not because they hate people, but because emotional overstimulation becomes physically exhausting. For genuine empaths, solitude becomes emotional recovery. Silence becomes nervous system repair. And after enough emotional overload, being alone starts feeling safer than being emotionally surrounded. Most people don't understand how deeply empaths process emotional environments. Even normal social situations can quietly drain them. A loud room, forced conversations, emotionally heavy people, constant negativity. The empath absorbs all of it internally. And while other people may leave a conversation and immediately disconnect from it emotionally, the empath often carries the emotional residue long afterward. This is why many empaths suddenly feel the need to disappear. Not for attention, not to punish anyone, but because their mind and nervous system need space to recover. Sometimes an empath may spend hours alone in silence, trying to emotionally reset after being overstimulated for too long. And during these periods, they often struggle to explain what they're feeling, because the exhaustion isn't always physical. It's emotional exhaustion, the kind that comes from constantly feeling too much for too long. Over time, many mature empaths become extremely protective of their peace. They become careful about who they allow close to them, careful about environments, careful about emotional energy. Because after years of emotional overload, they realize not every connection is healthy for their nervous system. Many genuine empaths experience something that feels almost strange. The moment they enter a room, they immediately sense the emotional atmosphere before anyone speaks. They can feel tension between two people, hidden anger, awkwardness, sadness behind fake smiles, and often, they sense these things long before others notice them. Because emotionally sensitive people unconsciously scan environments for emotional signals. Their brain constantly reads body language, tone shifts, facial tension, micro-expressions. Most people focus mainly on words. Empaths focus on emotional congruence. They notice when someone's energy doesn't match their behavior. A person smiling while emotionally irritated. Someone pretending to be kind while secretly resentful. And over time, this emotional sensitivity becomes automatic. The empath doesn't choose to notice these things. Their nervous system notices them instantly. Which is why many empaths feel uncomfortable in environments that others seem perfectly fine inside. Because emotionally, they're detecting tension most people can't consciously see. Sometimes an empath can walk into a room and immediately feel emotionally heavy, without knowing why. The atmosphere itself feels off to them, even if everyone is smiling, even if nobody is openly arguing. They can still sense emotional discomfort underneath the surface. This is why many empaths become extremely sensitive to fake energy, forced kindness, hidden resentment, passive aggression disguised as politeness. These emotional contradictions create internal discomfort inside the empath almost instantly. And while other people may ignore subtle emotional shifts, the empath's nervous system keeps reacting to them automatically. This can make crowded social environments emotionally exhausting. Because the empath isn't only experiencing their own emotions, they're unconsciously processing the emotional atmosphere of everyone around them at the same time. And after years of living this way, many empaths become highly selective about the environments they enter. They naturally avoid emotionally chaotic places. emotionally dishonest people, or spaces where tension constantly exists beneath the surface. Because for genuine empaths, peace is not only physical, it's emotional. Have you ever noticed how some people drain you, even when there's no obvious conflict? Genuine empaths experience this constantly. Certain personalities leave them emotionally exhausted after even short interactions, especially emotionally chaotic people, manipulative people, attention seekers, emotionally unstable individuals, people who constantly complain but never change. Empaths unconsciously absorb emotional states from the people around them. And when someone carries heavy emotional energy, the empath often internalizes it without realizing it. That's why emotionally draining people affect empaths so deeply, even if the conversation itself seems normal, because the exhaustion isn't coming from words alone, it's coming from emotional absorption. And after years of repeated emotional depletion, many mature empaths become extremely selective about who they spend time around. Not from arrogance, but from emotional survival. Some people create emotional chaos everywhere they go. Constant negativity, constant drama, constant emotional instability. And while others may tolerate these personalities more easily, empaths often feel emotionally overwhelmed very quickly around them. Because emotionally sensitive people don't just listen to someone's problems, they feel the emotional weight behind them. A frustrated person can leave the empath feeling anxious. An angry person can leave them emotionally tense. A deeply unhappy person can affect their mood for hours afterward. This is why many empaths become extremely careful about emotional boundaries as they mature. In younger years, they often try to help everyone, fix everyone, emotionally carry everyone. But eventually, they realize some people continuously take emotional energy without giving peace in return. And over time, the empath starts protecting themselves differently. They spend less time explaining themselves, less time chasing emotionally one-sided relationships, less time trying to rescue emotionally destructive people. Not because they stop caring, but because repeated emotional exhaustion teaches them an important lesson. Empathy without boundaries becomes self-destruction. And after enough emotional depletion, the mature empath stops giving unlimited emotional access to everyone around them. Because they finally understand something most people learn too late. Protecting your peace is not selfish. For emotionally sensitive people, it's necessary for survival. Most people can emotionally detach from situations that don't involve them directly. Empaths struggle to do that. When they see someone suffering, they feel it deeply, sometimes too deeply. A sad story, a crying stranger, emotional rejection, loneliness in someone's voice. These things affect empaths intensely. Because genuine empathy creates emotional mirroring. The empath unconsciously imagines what the other person feels, and their nervous system reacts almost as if the pain were personal. This is why many empaths become emotionally overwhelmed by the world itself. Too much negativity, too much cruelty, too much emotional dishonesty. And over time, many empaths start protecting themselves emotionally, not because they stop caring, but because caring too deeply becomes exhausting. Most people can witness emotional pain and eventually separate themselves from it emotionally. But genuine empaths often carry the emotional weight long after the moment has passed. A painful conversation can stay in their mind for hours, sometimes days. Even seeing someone silently struggling can affect them deeply inside. Because emotionally sensitive people naturally absorb emotional energy around them. They don't simply observe pain, they emotionally step into it. They imagine the heartbreak, the loneliness, the fear someone else may be carrying internally. And this emotional connection happens automatically, which is why many empaths become emotionally exhausted by things other people barely notice. Negative news, cruel behavior, coldness between people, emotional manipulation. Over time, constant exposure to emotional heaviness begins affecting the empath's nervous system deeply. Many start avoiding conflict completely. Some become emotionally withdrawn. Others become extremely protective of what they watch, who they talk to, and the environments they stay inside. Not because they are weak, but because their emotional sensitivity makes prolonged negativity difficult to carry. And eventually, many mature empaths realize they cannot emotionally save everyone. They cannot carry every wounded person. They cannot absorb endless emotional pain without damaging themselves too. So slowly, they begin learning emotional boundaries. Not to become cold, not to stop loving people, but to survive emotionally in a world that often feels overwhelmingly heavy to sensitive souls. One of the biggest misunderstandings about empaths is that people think isolation means sadness. For genuine empaths, it often means recovery, because being around people constantly requires emotional processing. Even positive social interaction consumes emotional energy. The empath is always reading emotions, analyzing atmosphere, absorbing tension, managing emotional stimulation, and eventually, their mind needs silence. Not entertainment, not conversation, not distraction, just emotional quiet. This is why many empaths deeply enjoy sitting alone in silence, walking alone, driving alone, listening to music alone, because solitude allows their nervous system to reset. And after years of emotional overload, peace becomes addictive. Not because the empath dislikes people, but because inner calm becomes rare. Most people don't realize how mentally active an empath's inner world truly is. Even during normal conversations, their mind is constantly processing emotional information beneath the surface. How someone feels, what energy they're carrying, whether tension exists in the environment. And after enough emotional stimulation, the empath's nervous system eventually becomes overwhelmed. That's when silence starts feeling deeply comforting to them. Not empty, not lonely, safe. For many empaths, being alone is the only time their mind fully relaxes. No emotional pressure, no hidden tension, no need to emotionally monitor everyone around them. Just stillness. This is why many empaths naturally become attached to peaceful routines. Late night drives, quiet walks, rain sounds, music with headphones on, sitting alone, thinking in silence. These moments help them emotionally reset after carrying emotional stimulation all day long. And over time, many empaths stop chasing constant social interaction altogether. They begin valuing peace more than attention, depth more than noise, calm environments more than crowded ones. Because after years of emotional overload, the mature empath realizes something powerful. Peace is not a luxury for emotionally sensitive people. It's emotional medicine. The truth is, genuine empaths experience life very differently from most people. What seems weird to others often comes from deep emotional awareness. They notice what others overlook, feel what others suppress, absorb emotions others ignore. And while this sensitivity can become exhausting, it also gives empaths a rare understanding of human emotion. Because genuine empathy isn't simply kindness, it's emotional depth. And once someone has spent years feeling the emotional weight of the world around them, they stop living only through logic. They start living through emotional awareness itself. And only true empaths fully understand what that feels like. Most people move through life focused mainly on actions and words. But empaths experience the emotional layer underneath everything. The hidden sadness behind someone's smile. The tension hidden beneath fake politeness. The emotional pain people try desperately to hide from the world. And over time, living with this level of emotional sensitivity changes a person deeply. It changes who they trust, who they allow close, how long they can stay around certain environments. It changes the way they love, the way they protect themselves, the way they recover emotionally after difficult experiences. This is why many mature empaths eventually become quieter, not because they have nothing to say, but because they become more careful with their emotional energy. They stop forcing connections that feel emotionally draining. They stop chasing validation from emotionally unavailable people. And they begin valuing inner peace more than constant social approval. To outsiders, this transformation can seem strange, but to genuine empaths, it feels necessary. Because after years of emotional overstimulation, they finally understand something most people never fully realize. Protecting your emotional peace is not weakness. For deeply sensitive people, it is survival. And perhaps that is the strange beauty of being an empath. Feeling deeply may hurt sometimes, but it also allows someone to understand human emotion in a way very few people ever truly will.